Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. This video is going to be about Charles Kinsey, the whole Charles Kinsey situation. So, I posted two videos last week. I posted one on Monday, one on Tuesday, and then this story broke about Charles Kinsey being shot in North Miami on Thursday. But I was just very tired. I was really tired. And I was just like, I cannot film a video about this right now. And then I was like, I'm going to do tomorrow, Friday. And then I was still really, really tired Friday, last night. But so I'm filming today, Saturday, and this video hopefully is going to go up today, Saturday. But for anyone wondering, like, why this video is not up until now, like, last week was just, like, a week full of, like, fuckery. Like, I had said on Twitter, like, I already posted 2 videos. I'm not going to film another video unless, like, something really, really, really absurd happens. And guess what? Some really fucking absurd-ass shit fucking happened, which is just... So here we are, 3 videos in 1 week, which rarely happens. So Charles Kinsey is a behavioral therapist that was shot, and I believe he was shot on last Monday. But the story didn't break until Wednesday when this cell phone video footage of him was uploaded onto the internet. And basically, he's a behavioral therapist. He works with autistic individuals in a group home. And one of his clients is not the right word, charges. So one of his charges actually wandered away from the group home. He was holding a toy truck and he was wandering around, and people called the police. They said there's a man wandering around. We think he has a gun. We think he's suicidal, and, you know, we need someone to come and get him or whatever. So Charles Kinsey, who's the man's caretaker, was trying to, you know, retrieve him and calm him down and take him back to the group home. And so people called the police, and North Miami PD shows up, and they basically turned it into a standoff situation, you know, guns blazing, you know, guns drawn. They have the cop cars, you know, kind of surrounding them, and they're like behind the cars up with the guns out, and they're like barking orders. So Charles Kinsey, so when the video starts, the autistic man is sitting down and he's like playing with the toy truck, and Charles Kinsey is laying on his back with his hands up, and he's talking very calmly to the police. He's saying, you know, I'm a behavioral therapist. This man is severely autistic. He does not have a gun. He does not have a weapon. That is a toy truck in his hand. You know, I'm trying to take him back to the group home. And then he's also talking to the autistic person. He's saying, you know, I believe his name was Ronaldo. So he's saying, like, Ronaldo, you know, lie flat on your stomach. Please lie down. And so the autistic man is kind of, originally he's kind of agitated, but then I guess because, you know, he's used to Charles as, you know, his caretaker, and he's calming him down. Again, here's someone that clearly has had training in de-escalating situations, right? From working, you know, with people with, you know, what's the word I want? Disability. So he's able to calm him down and de-escalate the situation. The cops, not so much. It's really gotten to the point where you just cannot call the cops for anything, because they're just going to show up with this mindset of, you know, we're going into battle. Like, we're going into battle, guns blazing. You know, we don't really care what the situation actually is. Like, oh, a person that's suicidal, we're not about to try to talk this person down off the ledge. We're going to shoot this person. We're just going to kill him ourselves, you know? And it's just really, 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 like, it's not worth it. It's really not even worth it to call them. Because you just, especially if you're black, you just run the chance of, like, putting yourself in a bad situation. And 9 times out of 10, they don't even have the proper training to handle your situation and to de-escalate your situation. Like, why did the cops show up to a suicidal situation, you know, with guns drawn, and turn it into a standoff? And then you have this man who's unarmed. He's laying on his back, his hands up. He's in probably, you know, the least threatening position that you could ever be in. And they shot him. He lived. Luckily, you know, thank God he survived. They shot him in the leg. The trigger was pulled 3 times, so it was not like an accidental, finger on the trigger and not just squeeze, which was what they said was what happened to Akai Gurley. They said that like, oh, he was doing the vertical sweep, guns out, finger on the trigger, and he just like squeezed and killed him. But they claim that it was an accident in the sense that they meant to shoot the autistic man because, we saw that he had something in his hand. We thought it was a gun, even though there's video of Charles Kinsey telling you it's not a gun, it's a toy truck. He's severely autistic. He doesn't understand what's going on, and they say in their statement like, oh, well, we were trying to shoot the autistic man because, he wasn't listening to directions, and, we were telling him to lay down on the ground and to put the object in his hand down, and he wasn't listening, and he wasn't complying, and we saw that he had an object in his hand, and, we thought that it was a gun, and so, we felt that, our officers felt that they had to shoot, because their lives were in danger, because that's the line, right? Their lives were in danger. So it's like, even though you have this man's caretaker who's in a prone position, who's right here telling you it's a toy truck, it's not a weapon, he's severely autistic, aka he's most likely not going to be able to comply with your demands. He's trying himself to get him to lay down. Ronaldo, lay down on your stomach, put it down. You're just going to disregard all of that and just say, well, I think my life is in danger despite what's actually happening right in front of me, right in front of my eyes, like the situation that's actually going on. I've determined that my life is in danger, so I'm just going to shoot. Bang, 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 bang. Again, he squeezed the trigger 3 times. It was not a mistake. Like, him pulling the trigger was not a mistake. So, but they're claiming they meant to shoot the autistic guy, and they hit Charles Kinsey by mistake, which I don't even know if I fucking believe that story, but whatever. They're like, oh, we meant to shoot him. And then people were like, well, then why did you handcuff him? Because after they shot Charles Kinsey by mistake, they rolled him over, they handcuffed him, and they left him bleeding out on the sidewalk for 20 minutes. So people are like, well, if you didn't mean to shoot him, if you didn't see him as a threat, why did you then, after you shot him, rush in and handcuff him? Because the toy is still in the autistic dude's hand, the toy that you thought is a weapon and this and that. And I actually read a statement that said, like, they gave their little statement about how they accidentally shot him. And then somebody was like, oh, well, if it was an accident, then why did you handcuff him? And it said, like, they didn't have at the press time, like, they didn't have a reason, like, oh, they say, oh, well, we don't know. Charles Kinsey said, he asked the cop, why did you shoot me? And the cop said, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Shoot first, I don't know later. Just shoot, bang, 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 bang. So, again, I don't really believe this story. This is just a story that they're coming up with to try to negate the fact that, yet again, they shot an unarmed black person, one that was literally in a prone position on the ground with his hands up in the air. So they're saying, we didn't mean to shoot the black guy, we meant to shoot the autistic guy, which even then is a horrible excuse. Like, so you meant to shoot the autistic man whose caregiver is right there trying to defuse the situation, telling you that the man has a toy truck, not a weapon. Even if I believe that story, which I don't, you've clearly just been trained to shoot, to pull the trigger, bang, bang, bang. I don't care about what's actually going on. I'm just trained to go in and see this as a combat situation and shoot everybody and ask questions later, or I don't know later. And the Young Turks actually has a video about this where they talk a lot about training and procedure and how it's training to go in, guns blazing, shoot first, ask questions later, how it's training to handcuff a person that you deemed a threat, even if the person is an adolescent girl, like Tamir Rice's sister. They handcuffed her after they shot Tamir Rice because it was procedure. She tried to rush over to her brother after they shot him, and they handcuffed her because it was procedure. They handcuffed Charles Kinsey after they shot him because it was procedure. These procedures and these trainings, cops are trained to see everything as a threat, and they are not given enough training on how to de-escalate situations, especially situations involving those with mental illness or with some type of disability, or, they just rush in guns blazing, no understanding of the situation as it's actually going on, even when people are trying to explain it to them. It's like, well, I don't care. I've decided that you're a threat, so I'm going to shoot him, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to handcuff you, and then when you ask me why did I do it, I'm going to say, I don't know. And then when the papers ask me, well, why did I handcuff the person that I accidentally meant to shoot, my answer is going to be, I don't know, I don't have an answer. And since they're the police, they're not going to be forced to give an answer. And all these people are going to stand behind them talking about blue lives and this, and this. And then the circle's just going to keep going around and around and around. And I think it's a great point to talk about training especially considering that, you guys might have forgotten this, North Miami PD was also the same place where last year it was discovered that the police department was using mugshots of black men for target practice. I don't know if you guys remember that story, but of course I'll have links in the description box. A woman went to the gun range after the North Miami Police Department had left, and they had left behind their target practice pictures, and she saw a picture of her brother up there because it turned out that they were using mugshots of real, actual people for target practice, and the mugshots were all of black men, right? This is the same exact police department, and when they were questioned about it again, this is normal procedure. This is normal training procedure to use mugshots. This is something that all police departments do. So in addition to the shoot first, handcuff, and then possibly maybe ask questions later training that they've received from the department, with that type of target practice, they're also training their brains to view black people, and especially black men, through a particular lens as a threat. Now, I've talked about creating shortcuts in your brain before in a more positive way in my video on safe spaces, but you can create negative shortcuts in your brain as well. You can create shortcuts in your brain that associate blackness with fear, with danger, with violence, with criminality, and when you do that, you're creating an unconscious bias. And this bias colors the way that you perceive the world and the way that you react to things. So when I was reading about this story, the first thing I thought about was unconscious biases and subconscious biases. So really, let's talk about that, right? Like, let's talk about an unconscious bias. Let's talk about a bias that we really have on a subconscious level underneath the surface. And basically, in the case of Charles Kinsey, in my opinion, that bias flared up. And the bias was, saw black, so shot. You react with fear on a subconscious level when you see a black person. I don't believe that they accidentally shot Charles Kinsey when they meant to shoot the autistic man, because to me that story doesn't even make sense, because after they shot Charles Kinsey, they rushed over and handcuffed him. Nothing had changed with the autistic man. It's not like he had put the toy truck down. It's not like he got down on his stomach. Nothing had changed with the person that you're claiming was your alleged victim. Was your alleged target. That's just the story that they made up. I believe they meant to shoot Charles Kinsey, and a huge reason of why was because of an unconscious bias, the fear that you feel on a subconscious level when you see a black person, even one laying on his back in prone position with his hands up. And a huge portion of that is because of narratives and ideas that were fed through the media. For example, despite intra-racial crime amongst black people being at its lowest point since the crack epidemic of the 90s, and the black population being at its highest in literally 116 years. The black population has not been this high since the year 1900, okay? Our population is steadily increasing, and gun violence is steadily going down, largely due to the many groups and initiatives that have sprung up to address interracial violence amongst black people. The media over-reports interracial violence amongst black people at a rate of almost 30%. And what that means is a black person killing another black person has a 30% higher chance of making the news, despite statistically being as common as a white person killing another white person. You have a 30% higher chance of hearing about a black person killing another black person than a white person killing another white person, or an Asian person killing another Asian person, and so on and so forth. 30%, that's a really high rate. That's a really high rate, and that can really work to twist and to warp public perception, and that's something that we are literally seeing, play out right in front of us right now. And it's just like when the majority of the images that are fed to you on the news, in the stereotypical roles that are given to black people in television and in movies and in books and everywhere, when they depict us as violent, as criminal, as angry, as we're killing each other, any number of stereotypes, you are going to be conditioned to think of us in that way on a subconscious level, on a level that you do not control, like a reflex, right? Like an automatic reflex, like breathing. You're going to feel that fear automatically, and you're going to react, despite the fact that it is a completely irrational fear. It is a baseless fear. It is something that you have been conditioned to feel, despite the fact that you're looking at an unarmed man an unarmed black man laying on the ground with his arms up, explaining to you very calmly that he's a caretaker, that this person is autistic, that this person is holding a truck, that he's not holding a weapon, you still feel that fear. You feel that fear because, one, you've been trained as a police officer to go into situations feeling the fear that, oh my God, they're going to try to kill me, and this, and this. And you also feel that fear because he's black. Because he's black. And you've been conditioned to feel afraid of black people. And I spoke about this in my Yes All White People video. You know, this has been proven. Unconscious biases have been proven over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in so many academic studies. And of course, I will have links in the description box. This is not an idea. This is not an opinion. This is fact. It is not up for debate. Because people feel like they can just debate anything nowadays. Like, no, it is what it is. It is what it is. I read a study once about how they showed people pictures of a white man attacking a black man with a knife. And then they showed them the picture, and then at the end, you know, they showed them a bunch of pictures, and then they said, okay, so in that picture we showed you, there were two men, and like one was attacking the other one with the knife. And then they said, which one had the knife? Most people said the black guy had the knife. Their brains literally lied to them. They could not believe their eyes. They remembered it that way because of an unconscious bias. A subconscious fear of a black person means he had the knife, you know? And subconscious bias is something that I really wish people were more knowledgeable about and that we had more conversations about, because unconscious bias is a big, big, big part of racism, right? The feeling that a white lady gets when she clutches her purse in an elevator when a black guy gets on is unconscious bias. It's a fear on a subconscious level. It's prejudice on a subconscious level. You feel afraid and you don't even know why. But there's a reason. Again, it's because of the movies you've watched, the TV you've watched, the books you've read, the white revisionist history that you learned in school, the commercials and the advertisements that you've seen, the music that you've listened to, the jokes that you've heard from friends and family members, the 30% higher interracial crime amongst black people that you've seen reported on in the news. On and on and on and on. All these different things are like tiles in a mosaic, right? They're like pieces of a puzzle that make up racism and unconscious bias in our daily lives. And that's in addition to, you know, outright illegalities like segregation or burning a cross on someone's lawn or using the N-word, you know, the shit that people say like, oh, well, if I'm not doing that, I'm not racist. Like, no, you're still racist. You're still racist, you know? And the worst part is unconscious biases can be worked on, right? But the average white person doesn't want to do it. Like, they don't want to get it. I read another study that said that once you're made aware of the bias, it can be changed because you can realize that you're having the feeling like, oh wait, why am I clutching my purse? That's racist. And then you can work on it. And the example used in the study was actually NBA referees. And they found that the referees were calling more fouls on other races that were not their own. But once they were made aware of it, the bias went down. Like, so they studied a bunch of different games and they like did all the data and they charted all the fouls. And then they said like, hey, white referee, you call less fouls on the white players. Like, work on it. And then they said, oh, okay, I can realize it now and I can work on it. And then they repeated the study like maybe 6 months to a year later, and the bias had gone down. So it can be done. It can be done. Getting white people to realize it is the hardest part because no one wants to be seen as racist, right? No one wants to be seen as racist because racism is so taboo that to even say, hey, listen, maybe you've been affected by living in a white supremacist society that elevates you because of the color of your skin while imbuing you with certain beliefs about black people. It just makes white people lash out rather than recognize that this shit is a serious problem. Like, they don't want to hear it. Like, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Because, again, we've made it like, oh, being racist is just like you're automatically like a bad person. Like, but that unconscious bias doesn't make you a bad person. Like, it's not anybody's, well, I mean, it's somebody's fault. It's white people's fault. But, you know, not in the way that you're like consciously, actively, you know, doing it. Like, live in a racist, white supremacist society, right? That doesn't make you a bad person being white in this society. But what is your fault and what does make you a bad person is the denial. The denial of what's going on, the burying of your heads in the sand, the excuses that are made for cops and for the justice system and for the financial system and for the educational system and for the housing market and for all the other racist isms in our society, you know, the demonizing of Black victims and Black people and Black bodies in this country and around the world, the refusal to recognize bias and unlearn it, so you keep on perpetuating these cycles, you know, that is what makes you a bad person. That is what makes you a bad person, you know, because your hurt feelings of being called racist and your determination to scream, I'm not racist, I'm a good person, that keeps you from recognizing your biases and changing and unlearning racist behavior. And so the cycle continues, perpetuating more racism and more unconscious bias through the generations. And that makes you a part of the problem. And that makes you a bad person. And that's what makes you a racist fucking shithead. And that is why Charles Kinsey got shot, in my opinion, despite clearly being a threat to no one. His skin color alone triggered fear, right? An unconscious bias that has been proven to even transfer the view of a weapon from the non-Black person's hand to the Black person's hand. So a toy truck in a non-Black autistic man's hand could become a gun in a Black man's hand. And that's personally what I think happens. And I will have links in the description box to all this, so please read the studies. And again, understand that this is what I mean when I say that, like, respectability politics are bullshit. Like, I have a friend that said on Twitter, you know, it doesn't matter what you do when the color of your skin is the scarlet A. Perfect statement. It doesn't matter what you do, how respectable you are. It doesn't matter if you're an unarmed Black man lying in the prone position with your hands up in the air. It doesn't matter that you're a behavioral therapist trying to help your autistic charge. Like, it doesn't matter. Your very existence has been weaponized because you're Black. So respectability politics make no sense. They make no sense. They don't matter. They do not matter. Kendrick Lamar, they don't matter. Like, they don't matter. And it doesn't matter, white people, what you say, how many Black friends you have, how much you love rap, how many Black neighborhoods you've lived in, how many Black people you fucked. None of that shit matters if you can't admit to the very simple truth that we live in a white supremacist society that has given you certain privileges because you're white and has conditioned and even imbued you with racist beliefs about Black people and a fear of us. It doesn't matter what you say if you're not actively working. Matter of fact, it doesn't even matter what you do either. You could do all the marches in the world and protest. You know, it doesn't matter what you say and do if you're not actively working to unlearn that unconscious bias and to spread knowledge amongst your fellow white people. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. So that's just how I feel about this whole Charles Kinsey situation. I don't believe the story that they accidentally shot him, that they meant to shoot the autistic guy, because again, the circumstances did not change after they shot him, and yet they like swooped in and handcuffed him and left him bleeding on the sidewalk for 20 minutes. But again, a lot of this goes down to training, the training of police officers, and also the training of your brain to see Black people in a certain way. And again, if you're not working on it, if you're not admitting that we live in a racist, white supremacist society and working to unlearn that shit, don't say nothing to me. So, food for thought as always. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Check the description box for links. See you guys next time. Peace.